to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with Jake Lawler.
Hello.
We are back to your regularly scheduled programming. I mean, we're still not talking about new movies, but it's going to have somewhat of a normal flow today. We've got some news that we've been letting pile up over the past couple weeks. We've got a throwback review of one of Jake's favorites, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. And we're also, in honor of that, talking about some good movie couples, some all-time movie couples there. So, in honor of, Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, Will and Elizabeth Turner. So, that's what we've got on tap today. But first off, let's catch up. Jake, how are you holding up in quarantine?
I'm great. I would have graduated today, but
congratulations. You did it.
Due to the COVID, I did it a year early. So I followed in the footsteps of what I did in high school. And it's nice. I mean, I think I felt that I had graduated when we weren't coming back because
right.
Zoom class.
School basically ended.
The attention to effort and the attention to detail, it's seriously declined and rapidly declined. But it's nice to know that I'll never have to take math again. That was a big weight off my shoulder. Oh my God. It was brutal. I honestly would have failed if it wasn't for Zoom. So,
I actually never took a math class in college. I haven't taken math since my senior year of high school because I had some loophole with my major and I took a poly class that counted as a math class. So it worked out really well. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, that's the way to go. But yeah, really just knowing that has been just tremendous. That's the thing that has kept me going. So,
well, welcome to the alumni club.
Oh, thanks.
We're a bunch of washed up.
The Rams Club.
Oh yeah, that's us now.
That's our official title.
Yeah, we're the washed up Tar Heels now.
And it's a big day for you too. You just won the Super Bowl in the Madden franchise. How are you feeling after that?
This is equally as important as you graduating college. I won the Super Bowl.
If not more important.
I dare say more important. You're right, but this was it had been 3 years in the making here. I started in the Superstar. Here. I had yeah, exactly the same timeline as yours, but I had started in that superstar mode. I was working my way up. I graduated from LSU, got drafted, bounced around the league a little bit, and I finally led the Patriots to the Super Bowl. It was a huge win. So I'm on top of the world right now.
Love it. You excited for next season? Get ready for a repeat?
Oh yeah, well I've got this trend going on where that was in my third year in the league, and after every year I demanded to be released so I could play with a new team. So I went out on top in New England. I demanded a release, and I got picked up by the 4-12 Dolphins. So it's going to be an uphill battle to repeat.
You should do that until you've won you've won a Super Bowl
every league, every team.
Yeah, 32 years in the league.
Yeah. But it's I had this game for the Panthers, we get a copy of Madden every time it comes out. So I had this since August and I hadn't even opened it. So, and then once it got deep into quarantine, I was like, well, I guess I better open this since I'm running out of things to do. So I'm getting back on my grind over there.
I love it. I'm proud of you, as everyone should be for your hard work. You've earned it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Jake, switching topics entirely here. I've got a question for you. I posed this question on Twitter and Instagram, but I want to have a little discussion here. So as I was watching a marathon of diners, drive-ins, and dives, and it happened to be after I had finished reading a book about The Rock, I had this idea. Would you rather ride along with Guy Fieri, for an episode of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and go to like 3 or 4 spots, however many he goes to, and dig in with him? Or would you rather join Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for a cheat meal Sunday, one of his epic, whether it's a sushi platter or some French toast with peanut butter, whatever he's got on the menu? Which one would you rather do?
I'll be honest. I have not. The only thing I know about Guy Fieri is that he seems to be a really good guy. And I've never seen anything that he's made. I've never seen anything that he's like produced. I've never seen anything that he's been in. The only thing I know about him is that he's a chef and he seems to be a good guy. So for that reason alone, and albeit my own ignorance, I'm choosing The Rock. And I mean, I feel like even if I knew what it was, because he seems like a good guy, seems a charismatic individual. It seems like he's got a lot of stuff to him, but like The Rock is The Rock. And, you know, you don't get to become the most famous person basically on the planet if, you know, you're not like incredibly charming and incredibly charismatic and also a good guy, which happens to be, you know, The Rock happens to be all three. And of course, you know,
right, definitely.
I'm a big gym guy, so I'd love to get some tips so I could send to Coach Hess so that they could compare notes. But
yeah, I'm with
Rock,
you there.
yeah.
I'm with you there, even though I am more informed about Guy, but I'm still going with The Rock just because. See, I think about this as a holistic experience. You know, I'm going to have better conversation with The Rock, just going to be a better overall experience there, even though with Guy, if you want to go just for the food, I would suggest going with Guy. But, you know, I think I'm going to sit down with The Rock. We're going to chat. He's going to smile and nod and listen and really pay attention to me. And it's just going to be a wonderful Sunday evening as we sip our Terramana tequila and eat our French toast. And then, like you said, maybe a little pump after that, lifting some iron. So, you know, I'm going with The Rock as well. I'm glad to see we're on the same page there.
Yeah. I mean, you just painted a beautiful picture. So I think that
it is.
anyone that was on the fence is now joining Dwayne.
Do you tune into his Sunday night Instagram lives where he has his cheat meal? Have you ever watched one?
I do not. Today is Sunday, so
it is Sunday.
We're recording this on Sunday, so by the time that this releases, I will have seen a cheat meal Sunday, and my world will be forever changed.
Yeah, he's been doing it ever since quarantine happened. He's been doing he's trying to plug his new tequila that he made, and he makes a special drink with it and teaches you how to do it, and then has like a giant plate of French toast smothered with peanut butter and just kind of tells stories on Instagram Live. So it's it's your classic Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, like him, you know, his motivational videos in the gym. It's like that, but like an extended version where he's just telling stories, and it's just, you just can't help but watch it.
Yeah, what's not to love? I mean, that sounds great. Speaking of quarantine, I've watched 48 movies since quarantine.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I saw you put out your letterbox.
I've been doing.
Put out your letterbox list. Is that how would you break it down?
I've been updating. Actually, let me bring it up.
How would you? So let me just ask you: Is it 48? So how many of those would you say are first time watches, and how many are repeat, or are those all 48 first times?
I would say it's definitely more first time than not. I mean, I think that I did, and the rewatches are things that I haven't seen in years, except for maybe a few of them. I know specifically, I do think that Steve Jobs is now my favorite movie ever. That may be just recency bias, but I mean, it's been hovering around the top space for a while, and I just watched it a few days ago, and I was just like, oh my God. Yeah, I'm looking at the list now. I would definitely say it's definitely more first watches than rewatches, and the rewatches I think are very much um, films that I haven't seen in 3, 4, 5, 6. Like we were just talking about Happy Feet before we started recording. I hadn't seen Happy Feet since probably the theater, and I just rewatched it. And like a lot of the stories are like that. But I'm gonna try to break 50 before I go out and go out swinging. I don't know how long I'm still going to be indoors because that's the way to go. That's what we got to keep doing. So maybe I'll hit 60, but it's been great so far.
Let's see. As far as first watches go, I'm far behind you since quarantine started. I've only got 11, I think, but then I've rewatched some stuff as well, and I've been watching a lot of new series and stuff. But I'd say of the ones, so since I only have 11, I'll just I'll shout them out for you. I've watched Sleepless in Seattle, Spy, Django Unchained, When Harry Met Sally, The Social Network, Hell or High Water, The Florida Project, Snowpiercer, The Big Chill, The Witch, and Enemy. So
what was your favorite out of those?
I would say Social Network. As you heard last episode about that being one of my top of the 2010s. I really liked Snowpiercer too. I didn't really, again, similar to Parasite.
Great, yeah.
Similar to Parasite, I went in not really knowing much at all. So that was, again, I think the best way to go about that. And then I also had a couple.
That's on my list as well. Snowpiercer. I had rewatched that. I'd revisited it this quarantine.
Gotcha. Yeah, I also in that time period those were just the old movies. So I'd also watched Spencer Confidential, terrible Netflix movie. I watched The Hunt, Extraction, Coffee and Kareem, another terrible Netflix movie. And I watched How to Build a Girl with Beanie Feldstein that came out this past week. That was pretty good. So if you're looking for something new, maybe check that one out.
Very nice. I've been on an Aaron Sorkin tear. I watched I rewatched Social Network. I rewatched Steve Jobs. I rewatched Moneyball. And I think I'm going to rewatch another movie that we'll talk about later on in our podcast. Not to spoil, but
let's go ahead. You want to go ahead and get down into some news here? We've got, like I said, we've been letting it build up, so it's instead of just having one thing to talk about per week, we've I guess we'll start doing this where it's let it ride for 2 or 3 weeks and then break it all down. Let's get started. Space. Tom Cruise. That's where he's going.
The final frontier. Tom Cruise is going to space. Apparently, allegedly, as of late, we have heard that Tom Cruise has partnered up with Elon Musk's SpaceX company to shoot the first feature film entirely in outer space. This is the most Tom Cruise story that it could not get any more Tom Cruise than that.
Right.
It's not going to be a Mission Impossible movie. People are throwing around maybe Doug Liman from who directed Edge of Tomorrow, and they have a partnership. Tom Cruise and him go way back. People have been throwing around that as the director. There is no director. It's just a brief announcement that Tom Cruise will be going to space.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something we'll see if it actually happens. But like you said, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Tom. So I will see. I saw a tweet that was I trust Christopher McQuarrie with whatever he does with Tom Cruise, that he's going to be safe. Do I trust Elon Musk with him? I don't know about that. So please be safe with Tom. I know he's indestructible, but we have a lot of Mission Impossible movies that we still need to get through. So let's keep that national treasure safe.
I mean, I'm surprisingly shocked and not surprised that they beat that Tom Cruise single-handedly beat space. I was thinking that it was either going to be the Mission Impossible series or Fast and Furious, which one of them was going to shoot in space first, and it looks like Tom Cruise is beating them to the punch. But if it is a success and no casualties arise from it, I'm very certain that Fast and Furious Mars one day for Fast and Furious 47, and that will be one hell of a show, because those literally could not get any better as they get older.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be it'll be interesting to see what this does for movies going forward. Speaking of going forward, I guess we've got a new movie.
Ooh, good segue.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to be like you still, but coming June 12th to Netflix, we have the latest Spike Lee joint, Da 5 Bloods. That'll be it, the synopsis here. Tagline: 4 African American vets battle the forces of man and nature when they return to Vietnam, seeking the remains of their fallen squad leader and the gold fortune he helped them hide. This is a 2.5 hour plus movie. It's got Chadwick Boseman in it. It's going to be like the one to kind of bring us through. If we're still quarantining by June 12th, this is kind of going to give us something to try and get back on track with new movies this year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so actually one of the guys that I met in LA had done some work for this film, and he was very excited for it. He didn't really share much, of course, but he said it is definitely something to look out for. So I'm excited to check it out. Just off of that alone, I mean, Black Klansman was great. I've always loved Spike Lee. Do the Right Thing, I think, is probably one of my favorite films ever. I mean, it's like if there's always been like a few contenders. I think that's like Steve Jobs and Fury Road, Iron Giant, and Do the Right Thing those are really kind of the few that sort of vacillate for like my top spot in my head. And Spike Lee is a tremendous director. I think that we've seen people that didn't know that he did the Jordan commercials have seen like how much, with The Last Dance, have seen how much he's really impacted our culture. And I think, using Netflix as like the place and the platform where he can basically like use all the money in the world to make a film that he wants to make is something that is really intriguing. And the fact that it's coming out basically in less than, in a little bit more than a month is very exciting.
Yeah, that's again, it's a light in the darkness of the movie landscape right now. So definitely looking forward to that one. So we also got some May the 4th be with you news, a couple Star Wars pieces to dissect here. So the first and biggest, I guess, is the fact that Taika Waititi, the Thor Ragnarok director, the Jojo Rabbit director, that's really kind of exploded into the spotlight, he will be directing and co-writing a new Star Wars movie for theatrical release. Not a Disney Plus one, but straight to theaters. Jake, what is your reaction to this? We've gotten a little bit of Taika in Mandalorian. Are you excited to see him come out in his own, I guess?
Yeah, no, I am. I think that he really has kind of a knack, at least after one outing as a Marvel director, in reviving franchise and reviving trilogies. I think that he did a great job with Ragnarok, breathing new life into that, into Thor's saga. And as well, it's written by Christy Wilson Cairns, who just had, a great debut, a great outing with 1917. So I think that tandem is really kind of, they're both co-writing it. And I think that, Taika's creative vision is something that is one of the great working American directors right now, at least in terms of kind of the public sphere. And I think that this is kind of right up his alley. And I think that, if they give him the creative leverage to do what he thinks is best, I feel like it's probably going to turn out really well. And when we see him in 4 years.
That's an if, though, because I know we were talking about it with Josh and Johnny, friends of the pod, but Lord and Miller were supposed to do a Star Wars movie, and there was the creative differences there. We had the Benioff and Weiss, they split. So, I mean, it's kind of Taika is a guy who's out there. Marvel did give him that free range, but Star Wars has been traditionally like, okay, you have to fit our blueprint. But so it'll be interesting to see if they actually do give him that full 100% creative freedom here, especially since it is kind of branching off into not the Skywalker saga.
Yeah, no, I think you really kind of nailed it right there. It's going to be something to keep an eye on just because of the recent departures. I think that saying creative differences is basically saying, like in college football, when someone gets a violation of team rules, it's like kind of like that overarching umbrella term that doesn't really mean anything unless you're in the room for it. But hopefully they do give him the kind of creative freedom and leverage, them both really, to kind of create something special.
Yeah, definitely. I hope we get that. But then we also do have some more Star Wars news, like I mentioned. A new series coming to Disney Plus. No real plot details or anything, but it's coming from Leslie Headland, who is the co-creator and showrunner for Netflix's Russian Doll. And this is rumored to be a female-centric story that takes place in a completely different time and place of the Star Wars universe than what we've seen. So again, just sort of that branching out from what we're familiar with, and really the possibilities here are endless, I would say, because of how massive this universe is, and we've only seen a sliver of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think also just kind of speaking of, well, not necessarily speaking of, but bringing back the word familiar.
The opposite of the new stuff. Yeah.
Familiar. Tamara Morrison, who played Jango Fett in 2002's Star Wars Attack of the Clones, will appear in season 2 of The Mandalorian, the Disney Plus Star Wars series. Zach.
But he's playing his son this time. He's playing Boba.
Yeah, he's playing Boba. Now, Zach, I know that we kind of had this conversation a little bit earlier, but, just to give your take on it, would you rather have seen it in the show? Like when let's say Morrison takes the helmet off and reveals, well, I guess even if you see Boba, but he takes the helmet off and he reveals that it is the same Morrison who played Jango, or do you think it's better that they release the news now?
I mean, I feel like you could have it either way. Like by announcing it, you're going to get that hype that people, I mean, I don't really think Mandalorian needed much more hype after the success of the first season, but now people are like, okay, Boba Fett, we've talked about him a lot, one of the most like renowned characters that didn't really do anything. He's finally back. We might get to see him in action a little bit because, as you know, he was dead, presumed dead, the last time we saw him in Return of the Jedi. But again, at the same time, it's like, okay, we're getting this in like a Hollywood Reporter article or wherever it came out, but this is months in advance of actually seeing the show. So would we rather have had this been a surprise, like some of the Marvel cameos where going into it, you don't know what's going to happen? So, I mean, I don't know. I guess ultimately right now, I'm not too concerned one way or the other, but I guess it depends on his role in the series. Like if he's coming back to be like a co-lead, then I think that's fine that they announced this, because it's good. If he's going to be a main character, then sure, people are going to know about it. But if he's just like a little cameo here and there, I feel like I wish that could have just been a surprise.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably pretty accurate. It's really how I feel as well. I think that they've done a really good job right now of creating hype for the show, especially with the Baby Yoda memes on Twitter. I think were like the keynote event that really kind of drew more people to watch it. But I think that this would have been something that would have been really cool to keep a surprise, but I don't think it hurts their cards or hurts their chances in any respect by announcing it.
Like, I mean, imagine if there had been an article before Mandalorian that was like, Mandalorian will feature Baby Yoda. Like, that's the kind of, I feel like that's the shock value or whatever that you're missing out by revealing this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But in other news, Hercules is finally getting the live action treatment.
Yes, this is huge. Jake and I, anybody who listens knows we're big Hercules guys over here. So this is huge.
Oh my god, that's insane. Yeah, it's being produced by the Russo brothers, who are famous for their Avengers and MCU outings, and it will be written by Dave Callahan, who also wrote Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Wonder Woman 1984, and Into the Spider-Verse 2. He's had writing credits on all three of those. And that is the tandem right now that is working with it. And a quote right now from
the Russo brothers.
Yeah, so a quote right now from the Russo brothers is, "We're going to give you a different story. I think we'll do something that's in the vein of the original and inspired by it, but we will also bring some new elements to the table." So
to me, that means like maybe a little different plot. So this is the big thing, I guess, because as we see with Mulan that we haven't seen yet, but we know what's happening there, is that they kind of cut the music out of it, went for a more action-packed version with some hints of the music in the score. But, I rewatched Hercules this morning, actually, the original version, and it's literally got the best music. I dare say the best music of any like classic Disney film. and it's just you can't do it without the music, without the muses narrating stuff and singing all of the like joining in on all the songs with the iconic songs Go the Distance, Zero to Hero, I Won't Say I'm in Love. Like there's so many good ones here that sure you can switch up the story a little bit and not have it be a beat for beat a la Lion King just remake, but you got to keep the music in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we've consistently said that Hercules is like the most underrated musical numbers and the most underrated soundtrack of the sort of like Disney canon, and bringing it to the silver screen again, but in live action form is going to be something that's really cool. I know that we're both excited for it. Something that also to kind of contemplate will be who will be cast, and I know that you've had a few thoughts about your dream cast.
Right. I've got the lineup for you. I want to get your thoughts on this. So I'm going to lay it out and you let me know if you agree, if you have any other secondary picks. But, first off with Hercules, it depends. A lot of this depends on you have to have similar ages with Hercules and Meg, so that otherwise it doesn't work. But, you've also got to get the balance of someone who can be strong and like the big hulking hero, but also has the pipes. So for me, I'm going with Taron Egerton. After Rocket Man, he can sing, but then he's also got that Kingsman background, so he's got the action hero as well. And I feel like he could bulk up pretty well. And pairing with him, I've got Zendaya as Megara, who, again, a lot of people are saying Ariana Grande. She obviously has the pipes for it, but I don't think she has nearly the acting chops that Zendaya has after seeing her in Euphoria, seeing her in Spider-Man. Other stuff. So I think that's your main duo right there. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Taron Egerton is great. He has sort of like a stellar performance in Rocket Man. He's charming as ever in the Kingsman movies, and he can sing. So I think that that's really like all you need for Hercules. Ariana Grande, I mean, I think she's fine. Like, I don't really have an opinion on her either way.
But it's Zendaya, baby. We're going Zendaya.
No, oh yeah, Zendaya would be fantastic. I mean, you saw Euphoria, right?
Of course.
Okay, yeah. I mean, she was just tremendous in that, and I think that she definitely has the ability to kind of do any role, and she does have a lot of range, and of course, she can sing as well. So that would be great. That would be awesome.
Now, hear me out. I want Jeff Goldblum as Hades. I think that's
a great choice. Yeah, that's excellent.
I was between him and Benedict Cumberbatch, but Goldblum has that a little bit more like whimsy to him than a more straight up Cumberbatch. So that's my pick there. Obviously, you got to go Danny DeVito if he's down to reprise as Phil, the satyr. And then, for Zeus, I'm going to go with The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I've seen a lot of other castings there, Kurt Russell as well. But I think the big one for me here is the Pain and Panic duo. I'm going with John Mulaney and Nick Kroll. That's one of those iconic Hollywood friendships that I think they'd have the good banter there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really solid lineup. Maybe I know you put it out on Twitter, so maybe someone sniped it and sending it to the Russo brothers right now.
Hit me up, Russos.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think you need to get in the casting department. But no, I mean, that's great. And I know that's something that we are very excited for. Something else that we heard about. National Treasure
Jake is excited for.
I am excited. National Treasure series is in the works at Disney+. We had already known about National Treasure 3, which is being written right now and will involve the same cast, but the series will be kind of the same concept, but will feature a younger cast, and they already have the plot and the series outline going for it. This is National Treasures. The first one is one of my favorite films. It's one that I consistently go back to. I love Nicolas Cage. I think that he can do no wrong. And I thought, I've always been a fan of great adventure films and kind of like historical adventure films as well. And this kind of hit all the marks for that. So making it a series, I think, is interesting. I'll be sad to see Nicolas Cage go, but of course, I am intrigued by it. So.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see just really how a series works, whether it's almost like a like serial kind of thing of like each episode is a different like historical adventure or something, or whether it's like an overarching series long or season long adventure. But then I think it also just has to, I guess, you have to take into account the scale of something, because in the movies it's these big sprawling national treasure hunts, but I mean you just don't want to run out of material there. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how much they have to work with there. But I mean, I'm like you I'm always down for a treasure hunting show. We talked a little bit about Outer Banks a couple weeks ago, but again, that's just a fun little like searching for lost treasure. So you can't go wrong with that. And finally, our last piece of news is going to lead straight into our review today, but there's rumblings that Disney is working on a Pirates of the Caribbean reboot series, trying to get it started once again with Karen Gillan as the lead. Karen Gillan that we've seen in Jumanji, we've seen as Nebula in the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy movies. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, it's obviously different than more a female-centric storyline, but just what are your thoughts on this moving forward? What's next for this franchise? I mean, there's a lot to work with here.
Yeah, I think that we will talk about it later in our review of Pirates, but I think that Pirates sort of really has a stranglehold on the kind of swashbuckler genre now, and they have since the Black Pearl really came out. I think that Pirates single-handedly revived and then killed the genre. So like, every other Pirates film, and I don't think that there's been many since the franchise started. But every other one up to this point will be compared to a Pirates film. So keeping it in the vein of that is smart. Karen Gillan, I think, is great. She's charming. She's fantastic. I think that she has absolutely what it takes to helm a leading role, especially in a franchise like this. I have no idea what's going to happen, and I do want to say that I love the word rumblings. So good use of that.
Thank you. I will say I did see a rumor that she would play the character. Her name is Red, which is apparently one of the characters from the ride at Disney World. So I don't really know if they have like a rich backstory with her, or if that's just like a starting point for them to really jump off from. But there's nothing really confirmed with that yet. So again, lots of rumblings. We'll have to see what happens moving forward. But let's go ahead and use that to segue into this throwback review of Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. We're not going full it's not a full rewatchables. We're just going to do it like a normal review episode. So let's get started. So this is a 2003 Rotten Tomatoes. They got a 79% certified fresh from the critics, 86% audience score. It's a success. I mean, this movie made $654 million worldwide on a $140 million budget, and it just launched, like you said, this pirate genre completely took it over. The swashbuckling, another good word, but just like it launched this mega worldwide franchise.
Yeah, I mean, Pirates is also kind of one of the movies that the first one is one of the ones that I really kind of regularly come back to, just because of how actively and consistently great it is. And I think that, when you think about great films and when you think about films that you come back to, I think that one of the things is that regardless of if you know what happens, it still finds a way to surprise you or delight you or fascinate you in some way. And I think that, The Curse of the Black Pearl really does all three. And it's one of those movies. It's one of the desert island movies, which is a little bit ironic, but it really is one of those desert island movies where, like, if you would, the age old question where you would take a movie and, like, if you could, it was one of the few that you could watch for the rest of your life. I think that this is definitely one that would be in contention just because of how truly delightful it is in, like, every respect and every capacity.
Right. I mean, I know this is one that you adore because every time we've talked about doing a rewatchables episode, you've pitched this one. So we're finally, it's been 3 or 4 times and we're finally getting around to it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those that you can just watch over and over. And I mean, the franchise as a whole is pretty solid, I would say, at least the original 3. This one's clearly the best out of all of them, but I mean, if you want to watch a pirate movie, you got to go back to this one just because it is where everything started. It is the best standalone movie. So let's break down this a little bit. Brief synopsis here. Not going to go too heavy into plot since this movie has been out for 17 years. You should know it by now. But for the roguish yet charming Captain Jack Sparrow, the crystalline waters of the Caribbean, like the high seas the world over, present a vast playground where adventure and mystery abound. But Jack's idyllic life capsizes after his nemesis, the wily Captain Barbossa, steals his ship, the Black Pearl, and later attacks the town of Port Royal, kidnapping the governor's daughter, Elizabeth Swan. Elizabeth's childhood friend, Will Turner, joins forces with Jack Sparrow to commandeer the fastest ship in the British fleet in a gallant attempt to rescue her and recapture the Pearl. The duo and their crew are pursued by Elizabeth's betrothed, the debonair, ambitious Commodore Norrington. Unbeknownst to Will, there is a curse that has doomed Barbossa and his crew to live forever as the undead. When exposed to moonlight, they are exposed to living Excuse me. That does not make sense. Rotten Tomatoes, get your reviews together. When exposed to moonlight, they turn into living skeletons. The curse they carry can only be broken if the once plundered treasure is restored. You know, that's a very fanciful description there. Rotten Tomatoes was really in on the adjectives. I just copy and pasted that. So let's go ahead and break that down a little bit more into
fantastic. Great reading right there.
Thank you. Let's make this a little more colloquial as we dive into this discussion.
Very nice. Another good word. You're on a roll.
The vocab is off the charts this episode. So, I mean, with you being so passionate about this movie, just kind of what is your relationship with this movie? I mean, when we both 2003, so I was 7 years old, 8 years old maybe when this came out, and you know, it just, every kid has a pirate phase. I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you know, I would get a stick in the backyard and pretend it was my sword, or, you know, go anytime I went to Disney World, I'd always get a sword from Pirates of the Caribbean, run around, climb on the ships at Epcot. So I was all in on pirates, and this movie only like made that obsession even greater.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think that this came at the perfect time for children of our generation. Boys of our generation, girls of our generation that always go through like the pirate phase, which, and it was great. Like I remember, I think I was 5 or 6 when it first came out. So I don't know if I watched it in theaters, but I do remember watching it when I was like 7 or 8. And I was just like kind of blown away by just how fantastic it was. And just everything about it was just like phenomenal. And I think that the reason I really keep coming back to it is just, I think, because I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but it is just so delightful. I think that it just has so much, and it's funny because it's like 2 hours and 25 minutes, I think, and it for me at least, it never really feels that long, and I always forget like the middle 45 minutes, like because I like every time I come back to it, I remember the beginning, and I remember the end, but I don't remember what happened.
Right.
And I'm just so surprised every time that I come back, and like there's like this whole other middle section.
Right. I feel that because like it's 2 hours and 2.5 hours basically. And it's like, I was heading into it. I was like, how do they fill all that? I remember, like you, I remember the beginning and the end and stuff, but then some of that middle stuff gets lost a little bit. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. I mean, that's one of my minor critiques is just the runtime. But what was had you been to Disney and ridden the ride? What was your kind of, I know we weren't really like old enough we weren't following the news when this was announced to be like, oh, they're making a movie off of a ride where you just kind of like go in a little tiny boat it's not like it's some action ride, you know?
Yeah.
So just like what I guess I loved the ride and just kind of, I love the idea of that, of taking it from something that's so small, but then making a massive world out of it. I mean, we know they're doing that again with Jungle Cruise. They've done that with a couple other things from the parks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever went on the ride. I can't remember. I honestly do not remember the last time I went to Disney World. I mean, I must have been like a kid. I think I only went once or twice. So childhood deprivation there. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome that they took a ride and they made not only a movie, they made like a great movie that made a buttload of money for Disney. I think that that's really cool. It's always, that's like kind of like the mind-boggling thing about this movie is that like not only is it great, not only does it have like an Oscar nominated performance in it, not only does it have like some of the best like sword fighting scenes in recent memory, but it's all from a ride, and that's just like that's just so crazy to me. You know, I think that that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, and you talked about the Oscar-nominated performance. Obviously, that's Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow. You can't talk about this movie without talking about him. It's incredible. This is one of his, I would say probably his best character ever. Just the way that he completely turns you. When you think of pirates, you think of the stories you hear as little kids, the books you read, Blackbeard, all these scary, big, intimidating guys that'll cut your head off and whatnot. But this is just kind of a bumbling, like smooth talking, conniving like guy. He's just it's the complete opposite, I guess, of what you would expect from an intimidating pirate.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about it, about his entrance, is that like, you know, the score is rising as he's on top of the boat, and we don't see that it's sinking yet.
And then it's just a little raft, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So we think that he's just like this great, fantastic, you know, pirate that has done all of these fantastic and wonderful things. And then we realize that, you know, he is exactly what you described. And I think that, you know, Johnny Depp did. I mean, I think you're right. I think that it really is his best character. I think it is the driving reason why Pirates became the success that it was, not only because the set pieces are great and the cast and crew did a phenomenal job, but really I think Johnny Depp's singular and distinct performance as one of the great characters in film of all time really is fantastic. And also, you know, he really kind of took it as his own. I mean, you know, most, like I would say a lot of the stuff in there is some variation of improvisation. And, you know, his ability to understand what this character was and what he wanted to do with it and make it so singular and so memorable is something that is like just fantastic. And, you know, he is the show. Like every scene that he's in, you know, he has a great line, or he has kind of a great kind of emotive expression, or he has a great fight scene. He truly is like the driving force of the movie, and he's a large part of what makes it so special.
Yeah, and I think that a big part of that is I guess the legend of Jack Sparrow, who he is. And so you kind of, again, with the entrance, you think he's going to be some big, incredible pirate, and then it's flips that on the head with the sinking boat. And then when he gets captured, it's, okay, everybody's heard of Jack Sparrow, but then he kind of has this bumbling escape as he's kind of like Johnny Depp improvising, but Jack Sparrow's improvising as he flies up to the top, zip lines across, and like kind of just is really just taking everything as he comes. And that's what you get throughout the whole movie of, okay, he escaped by using the hair on his back to corral sea turtles. And then it's like, oh no, just kidding. Rum runners picked him up. Like,
yeah,
there's this big persona played up, but then really you find out who he truly is, of just kind of like someone who's barely scraping by.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Twitter or Instagram was around, he'd be like one of the great influencers of his era, just because like he does such a great job of channeling his brand, and, you know, mythologizing himself in such a way that sort of captivates everyone around him. And, you know, I think that really sums it up. It's a captivating performance. And something else that's captivating is that the rest of the cast is just like perfect. I mean, you know,
yeah, definitely.
You know, like Geoffrey Rush as Barbossa is just like one of, like, having a titanic and like mesmerizing performance in Johnny Depp, and like an equally charming and equally exciting performance as Barbossa, and just having like Jack Sparrow and Barbossa's relationship being sort of like one of the pinholes of the film, and also one of the driving forces, is just like an incredible relationship. And it's something that is just, it's fantastic to see.
Yeah, speaking of incredible relationships, Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley, what a great pairing there too, is Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann. I mean, she kind of just jumps in and holds her own. And then obviously you see it throughout the rest of the movies of her kind of stepping into this, okay, who says women can't be badass pirates? Like, she comes in and just hangs with the guys. And then you see that transition of Will Turner as well, turning into a swashbuckling pirate from a stern, upright citizen. And, you know, I think the whole reason we're doing this top 5 hottest couples is because this is what a great pairing right here. I mean, if you didn't have a mega crush on Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Swann as a kid, like I know I did. So, I mean, that's like one of your, similar to Padme in Star Wars, that's just like one of the ones that you obsess over as a child.
Yeah, I mean, that's just really kind of the rite of passage thing. And also, speaking of Star Wars, Keira Knightley was actually the extra that was killed.
Yeah, with Padme.
Padme's stunt double that got smoked in a Phantom Menace. And Orlando Bloom is always great. I think that, and also, I mean, think about this. It's like as soon as he finishes Return of the King, Lord of the Rings, he goes straight into Pirates. And they said it showed. I mean, the stories that come from set said that like he was the most equipped and he was the most ready to do all of the sword fighting just because of his experience with Lord of the Rings and being Legolas. But, you know, I think his agent deserves an award getting him.
Yeah, definitely.
Two of the biggest franchises of all time and two of the most kind of marketable franchises. So that's really cool too.
Yeah, to have that lined up just right when you finish one to jump right into another one.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure at the time they didn't really expect it to blossom into a 3-movie, 5-movie franchise, but still, I mean, get that agent raise.
Yeah. But for you, I guess kind of what did you realize, or when did you realize like how epic this movie was truly going to be?
Right. I think that for me, it kind of is a maybe like 15 to 20 minute chunk in the first act where you're kind of getting introduced to everybody and whatnot. And then, like I was referencing earlier, after Jack rescues Elizabeth and then he makes his big escape, that's where, okay, like there's destruction here. He's climbing up, or he's like getting flung up the side of a tower, ziplining across it. So there's big stunts, there's big set pieces. And then you get that one-on-one fight between him and Will. And that's just, you were talking about the sword fighting earlier. That's just incredible choreography there. It's like a dance, the way they go back and forth, and then they get flung up into the rafters and balance up there too. I mean, I think at that point was really when I was like, okay, this is really something right here. This is gonna be big time. And then you just see throughout the grand scale of it, from the sea battles to the different set pieces, the raid on Port Royal when everything's just blowing up. It's just, this is massive, this movie right here. I don't know how it was only a $140 million budget.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming they just kind of saved some money doing a lot of the on location stuff. But you know, I think you're right. I mean, for like being only 140 million, it looked like the budget of the second film, which is actually 225 million. But yeah, the sword fighting is phenomenal. I think that they do a lot of set piece action scenes, which a lot of films do now. I mean, I guess kind of the most resonant one that comes to my mind is John Wick, in terms of kind of the set piece action that harkens back to Pirates. I think, you know, everything is a weapon. Everything, you can use every object, you can climb any object, you can fight any object, and they do that exquisitely throughout this film.
Yeah, I mean, and you see that even more in the second one with specifically thinking about the like, I don't even know, the not windmill, what's a water mill called? That they when they roll,
I got you, yeah.
When they roll on that thing throughout the island.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just they really did all of that. They executed all of that really well here. And another thing that is just, you can't, similar to Jack Sparrow, you can't talk about Pirates without talking about the GOAT, Hans Zimmer. What a score here. I mean, the soundtrack, the score to this is just off the charts. The medallion calls, he's a pirate, just those iconic themes. Like, this is some of the most iconic movie themes of all time, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you talk about movie scores, when you talk about themes, like film themes, you think all of John Williams' stuff, of course, and then this is right up there. I mean, you know, I think that every child that saw this movie has dun, 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 like ingrained in their psyche for the rest of their life. It's one of the first things that I think of when I think about rewatching it. And I think that's also really kind of a testament to how great the film is.
Right.
Every piece is working.
When I was in fourth grade, I was in band. I played the trumpet, and we had our little recital thing where our parents came, and like the other kids in my class are playing like hot cross buns and whatnot, like all the basic stuff from the book. Meanwhile, me and my friend we did like a little duet and had printed off the sheet music for the Pirates of the Caribbean theme, and we're trying to do this like expert and very intense song, and everybody else is just doing that basic stuff. But we gave the parents the exciting stuff, so it was that just speaks to the incredibleness of this song, of this score.
Yeah, that's just a good business decision by you, I think.
Gotta give the people what they want.
Exactly. Speaking of that, do you have any kind of favorite scenes or like memorable scenes that really stick out to you in your mind?
I mean, I already talked a little bit about the Jack's escape and the subsequent zip lining. The fight with Will, of course, already talked about that too. And I mean, I think this leading into the Dauntless Interceptor switcheroo is incredible. The way that they kind of steal the big ship, then convince everybody to come and get them, and then they switch over to it. But a little tiny thing that I loved was before that, when they're going, I remember being mesmerized by the underwater little rowboat scene where they use that as like a submarine basically. And I was just I thought it was incredible. I didn't know about like pockets of air. Yeah. The way that they take the boat underneath, and I just thought that was like magic. So that was another little one that really stuck with me. And then of course, go ahead.
No, I mean, just speaking of the water, I think that we have to talk about the magic that ILM, the studio that helped create some of the visual effects for the film, they created some of this stuff for the film. I mean, one of the most memorable scenes to me is when Barbossa says, "Take a walk," and all of the pirates on the Black Pearl are walking underneath the water, which is just amazing. And then the moonlight, and they become the skeletons, and it's that is like, when I think of pirates, I think of two things. I think of three, I guess. Jack's escape in the beginning, the fight with Will and the blacksmith, and the one that I always think of immediately is when they walk underneath the water and you can see them in the moonlight, and of course the score elevates that to an entire new level. But that has always been my favorite scene.
I wrote on my little notepad as I watched, I wrote, "Walking on seafloor is iconic. Wow." Like it's just it's one of those things, because they're in the shadows, and like you said, they kind of step out, you see the skeletons, and it's just like, again, you didn't even know that they could do this. And so it was just like another shock. Previously you'd seen them in the boats, so just like kind of learning more about what their abilities are with this curse. They're almost like superpowers. I mean, other than that though, I mean, were there any other scenes? For me, I liked the sea battles are just epic. When they're going back and forth, the Black Pearl and the Dauntless, and they're shooting forks and stuff, even though they threw cannonballs overboard. Like, come on, get it together. And then of course the final battle, and then even more than that, the Jack's last escape where Will kind of rescues him again. I mean, it's just there's just a series of really iconic stuff all around.
Yeah, I think one of the great scenes which you hit on is the final battle with Barbossa and Jack Sparrow. And I think one of the great, because I know we're about to talk about quotes here in a minute, but one of the great quotes of Pirates, I think, is when, and also I think one of the magic moments, or kind of the magic devices of Pirates, really what makes it special is the dialogue. It's written so distinctly. I think the dialogue is so distinct and so singular that, and it's fascinating, because lines that you would think in any other film would not necessarily be throwaway lines, but lines you would only use once, you will always hear again in this movie in some variation or some form of it, where, like, the characters remember what you said and they'll repeat it or they will like twist the words around, or they will kind of use a new variation of it, which I just think is phenomenal and fantastic. And, Barbosa kind of speaking a lot about, how he won't be able to feel anything in the initial conversation with Keira Knightley. And then when he gets shot and Orlando Bloom drops the medallion into the chest and he says, "I feel cold." And that's like just bringing that back. That's one of the great lines to me.
Yeah, I mean, that whole exchange, because in that battle, it seems like a straightforward kind of sword fight, but then you get the twist where you think Jack gets stabbed, and then it turns out he stole a piece, and so he's a skeleton now too, and then kind of just the switcheroo of throwing the coin over so that Will can drop it and all that. It's really thrilling just to see everything go down, and you don't really. I don't remember the first time I watched it, but even this time, I'm like on edge, even though I know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But there are so many great scenes, and there are also so many great quotes as well. I mean, like I was talking about it. Are there any that kind of stick out to you?
Of course, the iconic, "This is the day you will always remember as the day you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow." He hits that both times when he has his, like I mentioned, the bumbling escape that actually works out in the first one. And then in the second time when he stumbles over the back of the wall and falls into the ocean. But I mean, it's just kind of that, again, he wants there to be some big legend surrounding himself. And then it's just kind of barely making it out alive. And then, of course, the Captain Barbosa, when he tells Elizabeth the whole story of their curse and whatnot, and he says, "You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one." It's incredible. And then she goes out to all of the skeletons on the ship deck.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great ones I love is when Will is talking to Jack, and he says, "This is either madness or brilliance." And then Jack just quickly remarks, "It's remarkable how often those two traits coincide." I just think,
Yep.
He is like the master of responses. Like I just kind of talked about earlier, it's like you will always hear some line, and of course it's like, this is without a doubt the worst pirate I've ever seen, and then 20 minutes later someone says, "This is without
The
a
best
doubt
pirate,
the best
yeah.
pirate I've ever seen." And then Norrington says, "So it would seem." And that's like I think, and that's another reason why this movie works so well, is that everyone is totally and utterly committed to what they had to do and the performances they had to carry. And I think that's just another thing that makes it so special.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely all going in at the same amount. There's nobody that's kind of that looks dumb because they're not trying to match anybody else. It's full commitment across the board, which you can't ask for anything more than that from a movie, especially something that's as much of a genre piece as this. But I want to talk a little bit more. I know this is the review of The Curse of the Black Pearl, but we talked a little bit earlier about how this is the best of the series. There's 5 movies. There were the 3 original ones with the original cast. And then there was a little bit of a break, and we got 4 and 5 with Jack Sparrow and some alternating different cast members. But what is it to you? Do you agree that this is the best one? And if so, what is it that makes this one the best?
I do agree with you. I do think that this is the best one. I honestly have not seen the other 2 or any of them in the series really since they came out. I mean, I would have to go back and check them out. I can't remember the last time I rewatched anyone other than this one. So maybe just for that reason, I think it's the best, but I do not think that I am I've not seen them in a while. I've not seen them kind of recently enough to really kind of distinguish why this one is better than the others, but I do know that this one is my favorite.
Yeah, for me, I haven't really rewatched in a while either. I know that for this one at least, it's very much about the here and now, about this current adventure that they're on, and I'm sure that was the plan going in, because again, they didn't realize how successful it would be, whether they would spin off into multiple movies, but this was kind of a self-contained thing. I mean, sure, there were references where that can be expanded on later. We can find out what the compass actually does in the next movie. But I don't think there's just not really much mythology here. There's no lore to get bogged down in. It's just pure adventure. And I mean, I remember loving Dead Man's Chest, the second one, and At World's End, the third one. I loved both of those growing up. I just haven't revisited them, like you said, as much since then. But I do remember that 4 and 5 are not good. Once they kind of tried to revitalize it without Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley, it kind of fell off. But I mean, I think that the core trilogy is pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, I also remember enjoying them quite a bit, just for really a lot of the same reasons. The set pieces, of course, are just phenomenal, and they get bigger and bigger and better with the more money that Pirates makes. But I will have to eventually check out or rewatch the others at some point, just because we're talking about it now, and I love the Black Pearl so much. I think that it would be remiss of me to not give the others a shot.
Quick shouts to Davy Jones, to Bill Nye's Davy Jones, because that's still, I would say, one of the best looking CGI characters. That, I mean, without really comparing it too much, but I mean, he was that. I feel like that still holds up pretty well today. Like that was the moving parts with the tentacles and just the whole entire like costume design and digital effects on him. I think that's one of the best parts of 2 and 3.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you are absolutely right. I'm not totally sure if ILM did the work on the other two, but I know that they did a tremendous job with this one.
Any critiques here before we wrap up this review, Jake? I know this is one of your most beloved movies of all time, so I feel like there probably aren't many if there are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think I have any. I know that one of the critiques that I've kind of seen in kind of preparation for this is that it does run a little long. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that there's a lot of stuff that you forget, and then you like rewatch and you're like, oh, they go to the island first time and then they come back to it, and then there's a whole ship battle in between all that. But it gives you it doesn't give you a lot of breathing room, which I think is like, it works really well. I think it's for such a dense film and for such kind of a dense plot and so many things going on. I think they balance and juggle everything really well, and it makes for, a spectacular finish.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that a little too long camp. It's 2 hours and 23 minutes. I feel like we have this problem a lot where if we say something is too long, I feel like the correct way would be say, okay, well, this is where you could cut it, but we never really have an answer as to where it should be cut. But I mean, like you said, that kind of middle portion where, I don't know, I kind of forgot about the part like that Jack goes to jail on Port Royal first, like that he gets caught. And then like you mentioned, the 2 trips to Isla Muerta, just kind of those things that I get. Again, I don't know what you could really cut out of the storyline here, but just to I don't know. I watched it one night and ended up getting tired in the middle and then having to wake myself back up to finish it. So, maybe that's a me problem.
Yeah. But that is it. That concludes our thoughts on Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl.
Are you a Caribbean guy? I'm a Caribbean guy.
I am a Caribbean guy. I think that because that's like a divisive argument, really. It's like
divisive or divisive.
I'm almost positive it's divisive. I think Caribbean and Caribbean there's a little bit more wiggle room. But for divisive and divisive, I'm nearly positive it's divisive. But
I've always said divisive. This is getting intense here.
Looks like we're gonna have to have our own sword fight. But yeah, I say Caribbean. I say divisive. I say that this movie is good. I say it's great.
I also say it's great. Let's wrap that up and now get on to the top 5 hottest movie couples in honor of Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley, Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann. Now, Jake, did you correct your list or did you just stick with what you had?
Like seeing your list, and I think that it's a great list, but I think that ours would be too similar.
Okay, so you're sticking with
yeah. So I'm sticking with. Well, let's tell them what the hell we're doing for.
Okay, so for my list, I went with. I guess there was a little misinterpretation between Jake and I. I went with not the hottest people in movies or couples in real life, but the hottest couples who are in a relationship on screen. For example, Shrek and Fiona, like the characters together as a couple. That is not on my list, but I didn't want to pick one off the top of my head that would spoil anything. So that was my understanding. Jake, on the other hand, you want to explain what your top 5 is?
Yeah, so I guess kind of like
he's more wholesome. I was getting dirty with mine.
Yeah, I guess like hotness to me, the way I interpret it, divisive, is that I really kind of try to find, I guess, the best or the memorable or the most memorable or like the most kind of enticing couples that I had seen. And I know that I'm leaving quite a bit out that are very good, some that I think should probably be on my list as well. But in terms of what I was working with and what kind of fit the parameters of what I want to do, just either, couples that always made me smile when I see them or when I saw them, or couples that I think work really well or suit the film and make the film like what it is.
So again, Jake is just best wholesome couples that make him smile. And I'm talking about the sexy pairings on screen. So this is not a draft, just a list. There can be repeats. I don't know if there will be any overlap considering our differences here in list. But Jake, why don't you get us started? Number 5 on your best movie couples.
Okay, so number 5 on my best movie couples is from Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Have you seen that?
I have not. That's Jesse Eisenberg? No,
it's Michael Cera.
Okay, I always get them mixed up when they're early stages.
Yeah, no, they could have been separated at birth. But yeah, I love Edgar Wright. I think that Scott Pilgrim, it is a crime that it did not do as well as it should have, because it truly is like a great film. And the relationship in there is Scott and Ramona with Michael Cera and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I think it's on Netflix, so I would definitely recommend it. But they are just a whimsical couple. It's the whole premise is that Scott has to battle Ramona's seven evil exes to get to her heart and to be able to date her. And throughout it, it's just like a wacky, zany film, and it's a magical film. And I think that they have some really magical moments together. And anytime I think of movie couples, I always think of Scott and Ramona.
All right, that sounds pretty wholesome. For me, let's get down and dirty over here. My first one is very relevant because it is Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann, Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley. The reason we started this comes in at number 5 on my list. Big mega crush on Elizabeth Swann, on Keira Knightley in these movies as a child. So I think that kind of stuck with me. They're just an attractive duo on screen. I mean, the first movie you spend it rooting against Norrington, trying to get Will and Elizabeth together. And then throughout the rest of the franchise, you see them together. You see them get torn apart by Davy Jones and then their brief reunion. Nothing better than in the third movie when they finally get married in the middle of the maelstrom. They have that dramatic kiss. Barbossa marries them. The wave sweeps over them. Like, talk about a heart-pounding moment right there, and not for the action-packed reasons. Like, my heart was fluttering there. So Will Turner, Elizabeth Swann, they're attractive. Number 5 on the list.
Good choice. My number 4 is one of the great on-screen couples of all time. Han and Leia, specifically from Empire, but basically every time they're on screen together. One of the most magical relationships on screen, one of the most iconic relationships on screen. I think when you talk about movie couples, Han and Leia are sort of inexorably linked to that discussion and will forever be, just because of how great they are together.
I love you. Wow, what a moment.
I know.
I respect it because they were almost on my list. I ended up doing a last minute audible here, but Han and Leia, that's a good looking pairing too. But for me, number 4 is, speaking of Zendaya earlier, we're going with Zac Efron and Zendaya from The Greatest Showman. Not a great movie, but a great looking couple. You get that musical number. Have you seen The Greatest Showman?
I have. It is
so I mean,
wildly entertaining.
It's what?
Wildly entertaining.
It's very entertaining. Not a wonderful like narrative, but you get great bangers soundtrack in there. And of course, the number "Rewrite the Stars," where Zach and Zendaya have a duet. They have that nice sensual swing, whatever. The trapeze artists, and I mean, just two really good looking people there. I mean, Zac Efron, ever since the High School Musical days, the Baywatch days, just absolute hunk. And then Zendaya, one of my celebrity crushes there. It's a great pairing. You can't ask for anything more than that, except I have 3 that are better.
Solid choice. My number 3 is a film that I just watched for the first time recently.
There Will Be Blood?
No. But that is a undeniably great movie. Not a lot of good couples in there, though. It's a film that I just watched recently. Shout out to Josh Martin. I believe that this is his favorite film, but it's Casablanca. And one of the great on-screen couples really of all time, again, is Ilsa and Rick. They have a very complex and dysfunctional relationship, to put it lightly. But it's wrapped up in the love that they had in Paris before they got split up. And it culminates into one of the best endings I've ever seen in a film ever. And they are just magical together. I think, Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart they are etched into Hollywood forever just because of how tremendous they are. And this is one of it instantly became one of my favorite films, in large part due to their relationship.
You want to know something else that is etched, that's chiseled in stone?
Oh, God.
Michael B. Jordan's abdomen. Michael B. Jordan, Tessa Thompson, and Creed. What an iconic pairing. That's my number 3 on my list. I mean, Michael B. Jordan as a boxer spends 90% of that movie shirtless, which is never a bad thing. And then, of course, Tessa Thompson, absolute beauty. I mean, it's just, we're getting in the higher rankings here with number 3 through 1.
So my number 2 is Chiron and Kevin from Moonlight.
Great couple.
A great couple. I think also one of the most spectacular endings that I've ever seen, and one of the best endings, and also one of the best films of the decade for sure. Chiron really goes through a lot in that movie. He goes through quite a bit, and to kind of have, and under his new alias Black as the drug dealer in Atlanta, and him kind of reconnecting with Kevin in the diner. The diner scene is
incredible.
It's my favorite scene in the film. But their relationship, and him going back to the moment that they shared at the beach together when they were younger. They are one of the best couples that I've seen as well, and the movie just does a great job in terms of bringing that to light and kind of closing that chapter, or opening up the new chapter of their life and their relationship.
I feel dirty doing this while you're naming all these wholesome, like, moving emotional moments between couples. Meanwhile, I'm over here at number 2, Leonardo DiCaprio and Margot Robbie, Wolf of Wall Street. Whew.
Okay, good.
I mean, that's when Margot really burst onto the scene, I would say, and she stole the show there. I mean, I almost went with Margot and Will Smith from the movie Focus that I told you about, but I had to go with Leo. Just absolute power couple. Not really a healthy relationship at all.
No,
but a very attractive one.
Yeah, the parameters in which you're describing, they do fit the bill. My number one in terms of the best movie couples that I've ever seen. It's also one of the very few rom-coms I've ever seen. I think it's a genre that I've had a blind spot for, which is absolutely my fault.
It's a shame.
It is. But this is the best rom-com I've ever seen. It's a Rob Reiner film. It's written by Aaron Sorkin. It's called The American President. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not.
Because I know that you're more kind of akin to rom-coms than I am. This is definitely one to check out. It's a delightful film. It's Aaron Sorkin written, so of course it's great. But the relationship is Andrew Shepard and Sidney Ellen Wade, and played by Michael Douglas and Annette Bening. So it's about Andrew Shepard, who's the current president of the United States, and he meets the lobbyist, who is Sidney Ellen Wade, and their kind of relationship throughout the film is just amazing. It's punched up, of course, and elevated by Sorkin's tremendous script, and they are just a lovely duo that is heralded by some very great performances.
I'll have to check that out. I thought you were going with Seth Rogen and Charlize when you said political rom-com. But no, okay, so switching back over to the naughty side, number one, what you've all been waiting for, absolute hottest couple in movie history, and a real-life couple, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This movie, have you seen this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that would be the no-brainer here.
Of course, this movie oozes sex appeal. I mean, Brad Pitt, he's still in his prime at 50, however old he is, but he was even more in his prime at this point. And Angelina Jolie, I mean, it's a shame that they had to split, because that was just one of the most attractive couples of all time right there.
Yeah, I mean, no brainer for the criteria that you were selecting. I was getting
not really a healthy relationship for most of the movie, as they try to kill each other, but then they get it worked out at the end. So
yeah, for sure,
it's a heartwarming tale.
Something like it. There you have it. Those are our top 5 hottest and best movie couples.
I'll have to make a distinction on on the Instagram graphic, so that nobody thinks that you're over here saying that these are your hottest couples, or that I think that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie are the healthiest couple. but yeah, that was fun. That was a good ranking there, and it fit very well with our Pirates review. Thank you all for listening. We hope you enjoyed that. And as always, if you have any suggestions for what we should do to occupy the time here in quarantine, then we're all ears. But in the meantime, be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Inside Film Room. Make sure to rate and review, subscribe, give us a 5-star review on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to tune in next week. Jake, I haven't run this by you, so this is going to be a live ask right here, but maybe a Scoob review next week?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I love Scooby-Doo.
It's probably not gonna match up well with Cyber Chase. Or that was a great one.
The pinnacle of cinema.
Exactly.
Right, but yeah.
We might review Scoob. We'll have to wait and see what happens, because that's
for sure.
But stay safe, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening.